Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Bounty matches are back in the CDL 4 Major 4 and the Major 5 qualifiers, but it seems like the CDL have forgotten about the Los Angeles Thieves. New York subliners have 2 opportunities to get 10k over the coming weeks. Thieves have 0. Is this a mistake? Is there something else going on? Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to mention. Firstly, a big deal honestly in the competitive COD space, especially if you guys have been around for quite some time. aBeZy leaving and parting ways with Esports Engine. You guys may well know aBeZy from the MLG days, where he was critical in building up that organization. Then since they kind of, well, MLG was then part of Activision, and then Activision did their own thing for a while. Then Adam created Esports Engine. That runs production for many esports leagues, including, of course, the CDL at the moment, and he's now seemingly parting ways with them. Not exactly sure why, but he's left the company, a co-founder, of course, of MLG and Esports Engine, and been incredibly influential in the growth and development of the competitive COD ecosystem over the last decade and a bit, to be honest. And he hasn't really given a statement as to why exactly yet, but this tweet that he did a few days ago, I was wondering what was going on, because a lot of his employees were all giving the hearts in the replies here, and of course he's parting ways. And as he says, I'll be making a statement soon, nothing but love for the family at Esports Engine, grew up in this industry, everyone I owe so much and all this stuff. So yeah, stand by, he says, which sounds like he has something else exciting in the works as well, but certainly an incredibly important individual in the history of this esport. So I'll definitely be keeping up with whatever he goes on to do next. And hopefully Esports Engine is still in as good of a spot without him. I'm sure he's built up a great team of guys that can continue this forwards without having to concern himself with the company falling off a cliff. But nonetheless, it's a bit of a concern potentially that aBeZy, the head guy there, is going to be gone, because obviously Esports Engine is critical to the current operations and production, everything behind the scenes of the CDL as it stands. Let's talk about Rostermania then. So the rotations say it's only just beginning. Now, usually when he tweets this out, and there's something going on in the pro scene as well. We know there's changes with London happening. We don't know elsewhere in the league, just because there are some teams that I think probably should change, but they might just hold out for a little bit longer, and if things go terribly at the start of Major 3, they might make a move then. We know Toronto made a move within a weekend. I think they played a game Friday, made a change, played a game Sunday, and of course since then went on to win an entire event. Priest did tweet out this heart emoji last night, and even subliners also replied with the heart, and people thought, oh, here we go, Priest is getting dropped, because if there is a change to be made on the subliners, I would say Priest is the most likely candidate to be replaced, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. He says just showing some love on the timeline. I think he means TL, not TO here, but they're right next to each other on the keyboard, nothing serious. So I mean, yeah, maybe subliners are going to stay together, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea, but it seems such a consistent trend in COD when the team that wins the first event very rarely maintains that level, because usually there's some teams, it was subliners this year, that were ahead of the curve, that knew the game better than anyone else at the start of the title. They had Hydra, they also had Skies, Priest, Kismet also playing at a very high level. Lately that hasn't been the case, maybe not exactly as a massive surprise, but it seems like such a consistent trend where teams will do well at the start of the game, then they'll fall off a bit, and they'll think, oh, we can get that to that point, we can get back to that level again, like they did at the start of the year, but it very rarely happens. We've seen it with OpTic for years, that won the first event, let's say, then they fall off, then they come back, but they get maximum top 4, top 3 at the end of the year. They're never quite good enough to win again, and I don't know if there really is any teams in recent memory that have won the first event and then got on to, do it again at the World Championship, let's say, with the same roster. It doesn't really happen, so I wouldn't be surprised if subliners could benefit from a change, but it's tough to say exactly what change would benefit them. Kismet and Hydra I still think are a good duo. Skies is okay, but look at the damage per 10 minutes of the ARs in Hardpoint. They're just in the red, so the pacing maybe isn't quite there where it needs to be. Interesting questions. Also in the European kind of challenger side, an absolute super team is getting formed here, because aBeZy, Vortex, Harry, and Drazah are becoming the Awoba Bobs again. I think there was some drama with these guys, with some French players not wanting to learn English, and then some did, and then it's absolute chaos. I mean, it's classic challenges drama, to be honest. And also with other changes going down, I thought this is pretty tough actually for the Ravens. The fact that Vortex, Harry, Gizmo, Dento, and DiamondCon, players that have, I guess played at the Pro-Am and beat some of the pro teams, have more wins on LAN against pros than the Ravens do. I feel kind of bad for Ravens, because they're actually not terrible, this team, but they just haven't won anything on LAN against the pro team so far this season, which is pretty tough going. They should have been at OpTic though, right? Maybe they could have made a run, but wasn't happening after OpTic made that remarkable comeback and London threw it away. Let's talk Himmelmatt Expo real quick, because Fortress had a worse win percentage on offense than Gavutu did in Stage 4 last year. Stage 4 last year, I guess, was the worst of the bunch, with a 16% offensive win rate, and Fortress managed managed to top that with a 13% win rate, and that's probably going to be the last we see of Fortress Control if indeed Heelmat Expo is in the game. Now, I did want to mention, because yesterday I mentioned in a video that what if they copied and pasted this from another real-life location, and like they did with Hotel, like they did with Museum, and of course the Raceway map as well. Now, because I mentioned this, Speedy Greed on Reddit actually decided to do some research into kind of, you know, convention centers, let's say, or congress centers around the Swiss Alps, and he found this one at the Davos Congress Center, which, you know, from people who live locally, apparently it does look remarkably similar. You can see this pool outside. Now, look, this isn't a straight copy-paste job. I don't think there's going to be any issues. If it was too similar, I probably wouldn't have even mentioned it, just to hope that Davos Congress doesn't reach out to Infinity One and say, hey, we're not particularly happy with this, but I think it's significantly different enough to be considered to be maybe inspired by, like, some of this architecture, but it's certainly not exactly the same. But you guys can see here that this, especially the front of it, comparing this to, let's just say, like this part of the map here with, they've got this roundabout type thing, which is kind of what they've got here as well in real life, and the front of the architecture is kind of similar, not exactly the same, but there are certainly some similarities between the two. But this time, hopefully, it's going to be all good, and Shotzzy's been getting ready to go on it as well. I don't know that Crowder was kind of coming up with some ideas for what Shotzzy's movement might potentially look like, diving out of these windows here into the pool, just doing some 360s. Could be a new route for Shotzzy on this map. I'm sure he's going to have a good time on it, and hopefully it's certainly in for Control. Whether for Search and Destroy, I think it's more likely that it goes in for Search than it does for Hardpoint, because right now the Hardpoint maps are okay, the rotation is in a decent position, and I don't think that any teams are going to agree to change the Hardpoint rotation, because, like, let's say Expo was in the game right at the start of the year and was introduced when the game launched. I think there's a good chance Expo was in the rotation then, maybe instead of Hydro, maybe instead of something else, but as it is now, because different teams have different preferences, it's probably going to stay as it is, the Hardpoint rotation. There is a chance, though, it gets swapped out in Search and Destroy, which I think would be quite exciting given the way that I've seen it play so far. Let's talk bounty games. If you guys have been around since last season, you'll remember the bounty matches they did, where the winner of these bounty games wins $10,000 extra. Now, there was a good argument to say that this $120,000 they're putting up here over these couple of stages could be better invested elsewhere. Like, there was an argument to say, okay, maybe you give some money to the fans or something that watch these series, or there's some sort of giveaway involved. I don't know, because does this extra money incentive really, like, you know, racket up the views, right? Do people really tune in extra for the bounty games? I don't know, but they've had they've had some chances before to test it out, and I guess they believe that it does indeed have a rate of return, so they're going to keep doing it, which I guess is fine for us to watch. And I guess their idea is that as the season progresses, stage 4, stage 5, usually the viewership will decline a bit at the middle of the season because other sports are going on, it's more getting towards the summertime, and then usually it picks up again right towards the World Championship. But Major 4 is probably historically one of the lowest viewership stages, and it might be the same case again, but right now COD's kind of popping, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, bounty matches are back, I guess, to try and spice up the interest, and they must have thought they worked last year, so they're doing it again. However, this statement from the COD League, every team gets one bounty per week, doesn't actually seem to be true. So these are the bounty games here. So this is the entire schedule here for Major 4, and from the 2nd, or this is the 7th of April, so the week of the 7th of April, that week is a bounty week. So Breach Ravens, Florida versus Surge, Subliners versus Rokkr. Then we have one game that's not a bounty game, actually a couple of games that aren't bounties on the 8th, and then we go to Subliners versus OpTic. So, you know, for some reason here, apparently the way it was meant to be done is that 6 teams, there's 6 bounty games per week, right, in this case, and there's another bounty week in stage 5 in the qualifiers. I guess in the second week of those qualifiers, we'll see in a second here. The idea is that in that week, there are 6 different matches that are played between 12 different teams, and therefore there's one per go. Now, it seems like the scheduling hasn't worked out perfectly here, because they've chosen Subliners Rokkr as a bounty game, and then the very next day, Subliners play another bounty game. So New York are getting 2 opportunities in 2 days to win $10,000 extra, whereas all the other teams are getting 1, and Thieves are getting 0. So Thieves have no bounty games this week. Like, I don't know, they play OpTic here, they play Rokkr on the final day, but I guess the way they wanted to do this over one weekend, they just couldn't make the scheduling work to allow it to work for Thieves, because if they chose this match to be a bounty game, Thieves versus Guerrillas, which I think would make sense given their kind of local rivalry theoretically, then I guess they couldn't choose this game for Vegas, and they'd have to choose another game for Vegas, which would mean they couldn't choose this game for FaZe. So basically what it's boiled down to is that Thieves don't have a bounty match this week. So out of all the teams that could win the 10k, Subliners have 2 chances, and Thieves have 0 chances, as it currently is. Now, thankfully, in stage 5, it actually works better here. So these are the stage 5 qualifiers, and on this occasion, then we do have it correct. So we've got Florida Boston, London, FaZe, Thieves, Mutineers, and then New York Guerrillas, Vegas, Rokkr, and then Ultra Texas. So it works out there, right? We've got all 12 teams for these matches, and Thieves do get a chance to get 10k against Florida. And obviously, you can also argue that with some of these bounty games, some teams have an easier time than others, right? Because if you're, let's say Surge are really good and Florida kind of suck, that could be a free 10k. But I must say, I thought it was very interesting that somehow Thieves haven't got a bounty game here, and subliners have 3. So over the 120k that's given out, 30k of that could go to the subliners because they've got 2 in stage 4 and 1 in stage 5, whereas Thieves have 0. So I don't really know what they can do about this, whether there's a better solution here, but the idea that subliners have 2 opportunities and Thieves have none, and they're saying, oh yeah guys, like every team has got 1 chance, it's like, are they going to address this on the broadcast when they get to the Thieves game? And they're like, well, Thieves didn't really have a bounty game, so I don't know, a bit of a weird one, but I guess Thieves aren't going to be too worried about it. But still, it's a couple of grand each. I wonder whether Nadeshot will say, alright, we're going to put up our own 10k bounty for this Guerrillas versus Thieves match, but if Guerrillas win, we keep the money anyway type thing. I don't know, bit of a strange one to be honest. Also wanted to mention the point standings as it is. So these are the changes post Major 3. FaZe still number 1, as they probably will remain, but honestly, who knows? We're just going to talk about FaZe later today, because they do have some issues to address. They're still first, but Toronto now only 10 points behind in second after their victory, of course, at Major 3. OpTic in third now, 15 points ahead of the subliners that have dropped down to 4th. Then Thieves after a tough run at Major 3. Then Boston, Surge, and then we get to really the fight for the World Championship spot. We reckon maybe 190 points, 195 might be enough to make it through to the World Championship. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But Rokkr are in a decent spot. They're a team that could either flop again, or maybe they'll make a change, who knows. But they're surely going to be better than what they did last stage, right? There's going to be some regression to the mean here in their performances. So Legion are going to have to keep up their level. The idea that Guerrillas or Mutineers or Ravens can realistically close that gap probably isn't going to happen. And all the teams from 7 and above, I think, are probably dead certs to make it to champs at this point. It's only that fight for the 8th seed that's in question, but I still think Rokkr are going to get it over Legion, to be honest. I'm not really sure Legion quite have the legs, but still, they've got 2 more stages to make something happen there. Also wanted to mention that this time of year is when we start to potentially see some additional weapons get brought into the meta. Now, I don't expect this to happen. I think that probably it's still going to be the Vaznev and the TAC in play, but the MP7 or whatever it's called in this game has been getting some use by Shotzzy over the last few days, and it does seem potentially viable in certain situations. We've seen in previous games that some weapons on certain hardpoints in certain situations can be viable. Even back in Black Ops 2, there was some people who used the MP7, but also that people that used the Scorpion, but it was like, okay, you can only use it on certain hardpoints, certain rotations, because the gunfights will be in a certain way. So maybe there's a chance that we see some teams use some other alternatives. And it seems like Shotzy's been checking out right here whether it could potentially be viable. And also to note here, this has been going around esports over the last couple of days. Ghosty got his check mark, but there's also this badge next to his name. It's pretty cool. Apparently this costs $1,000 a month for the team to get this ability to do this, and then it costs an additional amount of money per player you want to have it happen to. But yeah, pretty cool. Like next to his name you get this OpTic logo, and if you click on it, it goes to their homepage. So pretty cool stuff. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
And I found out that we lost to Paris or Vegas Legion when I met a fan at the club. No bullshit, it's a true story. He says, sorry about that loss, brother. I'm like, yeah, man, FaZe just had us on the right day, bro. The FaZe got the better of us. He's like, FaZe? I'm like, yeah. Atlanta FaZe, it was a tough match. We lost, but it is what it is. He's like, no, brother, Clayster. I'm like, Clayster? Vegas? He's like, yup. I swear to God. That shit was not great news to get, but you know what it is, man. It is what it is. Can't win them all. You know how talented this group of gentlemen are.